author John Mayberry. We can clap now. That's Jonathan. Excuse me, Jonathan. Very good. John's currently writing V-Wars for us, and there's a preview of Rotten Ruin available at the booth for free as well. Hey, people, right on. Come on in, get seated. Good enough. All right, and then.
Good timing.
What's that?
Good timing.
Good timing. All right, that's a bit of a crowd. It's feeling good. Okay, and then next on the dais we have John Lehman.
Hello.
John John's been a great friend to IDW. He wrote one of our first titles in a How to Draw book, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
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 He also wrote Scarface, which was an excellent miniseries, and now you probably know him best for Chew. Next to John is Rob Guillory, the artist for Chew. And interestingly enough, I think the man who just joined the panel, David Hedgecock, was the first person to hire Rob in comics for an 8-book Teddy Scares.
Yeah, that's true. He's the first guy to actually pay me.
First time to pay. That's even better.
For art.
There you go.
Right.
Joining us late, managing editor David Hedgecock. And David's also the editor for V-Wars and for Skylanders. That's worth clapping for. We'll take claps for that. Lastly, Nate Murray. Nate does product management and marketing for IDW Games and talks about himself in the third person. Okay, let's get started. So, as I mentioned, IDW Games is the newest venture from IDW. It's led up by this man. And Jerry, why don't you tell us how it got started and a little bit about your background?
Sure. I've known Ted Adams for about 20 plus years, and he brought me in a few years ago to just do some business development. And as I kind of went through the process of looking at what was going on in IDW, looking for new opportunities, I had a background in gaming. I was the vice president of entertainment at Upper Deck for several years, working on the Yu-Gi-Oh brand. And oddly enough, I was one of Ted's first clients. He came in with his newly formed Idea and Design Works and was doing all the game development for us on a contract basis. So him and I go back quite some time. And so when I got into IDW, I had realized that a lot of the properties that they were working with and the processes internally fit well for board games. And so I started bugging him saying, hey, you know what, we should do a board game. He's like, Jerry, focus on some of the other stuff first. And so about 6 months later, I finally said, you know what, we got to do it. And he gave me the green light. And late last year, we started putting together some licenses and some properties, looking at the portfolio. And here we are today, and we're going to have about 8 or 9 games out before the year's up. So, yeah, it's exciting.
Okay, and the company that's going to help us with a lot of that is Pandasaurus Games.
So the relationship with Pandasaurus is that they're a small publisher that had already put out a handful of games over the last few years, very high quality games, but they were a very small printer, and so I had struck a deal with Pandasaurus to basically have IDW take over all the publishing of their games, while at the same time tapping Nathan McNair, who is the game development manager over there, to find some new opportunities internationally for us. And as you can kind of see up on the screen, these are some of the games that they have either acquired or previously published that now IDW is publishing.
So we'll go deep into 2 of the games on that screen, but some of the historical games that they do well are Tammany Hall, which will be back in print next month, Radis Cardis, which is a card adaptation of the Radis board games, and we'll have that out in September, and Yado, which leads nicely to the next slide, the first game from IDW Games. Okay, so our first game is Kill Shakespeare. Do we have any Kickstarter backers in the house?
All right.
Okay.
Fantastic.
So we're going to end up delivering about 3 months late on this Kickstarter, which in Kickstarter math is 11 months early. So I mean, to be fair, thank you for backing us, first of all.
Yeah, thank you much.
And I think when you see the final product, you'll be happy and it'll be worth the wait. Jared, do you want to tell us a little bit about the world of Kill Shakespeare?
Well, I'll give it a little bit of background on Kill Shakespeare itself. Is a graphic novel that's been published by IDW over the last few years. It's a fantastic comic series. It is a mashup world of Shakespeare, pitting all of Shakespeare's heroes and villains together in one world. It was a great premise for a game, and so we thought it was a great place to start. I think as far as the gameplay goes, I'll let Nathan talk a little bit to some of the details, but it's again, it's a very involved world. It's a very complicated game, but we're really excited about it. We got J.K. Woodward to do full painted art on every card. Glenn Fabry did the packaging art, and it's just overall, it's just a fantastic looking product. We're excited. We can't wait for it to come out.
So as far as gameplay goes, Kill Shakespeare is semi-cooperative. It's set in a world where you play as one of Shakespeare's greatest heroes, and you're in a realm where King Richard and Lady Macbeth have kind of oppressed the whole nation. So it's territory liberation. You're going to start with 8 territories, completely in control of the bad guys, and you're going to work to save the realm. It is semi-cooperative. There's going to be one winner, so each round you'll be deciding whether to help the group or to kind of steal a few points for yourself. Again, the art by J.K. Woodward on this has been incredible, and it's from the same design team as Yato, which is an excellent worker placement game, and we'll be republishing that. We'll have that out in October. Okay, let's move on. This one's just wrapping up development, the X-Files board game. Jerry, do you want to give a kind of an overview of what that is?
Yeah, sure. So X-Files obviously was already in IDW's portfolio from a publishing standpoint on the comics, and again, a sort of untapped license for board games. So when years ago, when X-Files sort of had its run and went dormant for a while, there has never been an X-Files board game. And so when we were looking in the portfolio and we thought this was a great opportunity to bring it back, we were shocked at how overwhelmed we were from the fan base about this upcoming game. We've tapped Kevin Wilson, who has done a lot of fantastic games with Fantasy Flight. He's a top-notch game designer. And basically, you're playing one of the agents at the table, and the syndicate's throwing all kinds of obstacles at you to try to divert you from not solving X-File cases. We have built out the game so that you truly feel like you're part of the world of X-Files. So all the components the cards look like files, the board looks like a map sitting on a table. We've put a whole bunch of Easter eggs based off of X-Files inside of the map that hopefully some of the fans will be able to crack what episodes they came from. The player sheet looks like credentials, so all of it really is trying to come together to make you feel like you're part of that world.
Yeah, you're going to see most of your favorite villains from seasons 1 through 3 in this game. And it's great. Kevin Wilson is the designer of one of the best paranormal investigator games of all time, Arkham Horror. But that's a hard game to bring to your table because it's 3 to 4 hours long. This game plays in the same amount of time it takes to watch an episode of The X-Files. So that's what it feels like. It's got great thematic tones, and we really hit a lot of Easter eggs in there. So X-Files news we see in the front room. Make sure you get a good shot of that map. All right. Okay. Anybody heard of Machi Koro?
We're really fortunate to have Pandasaurus on board because Pandasaurus actually landed this game from Japan several months ago, and through our publishing deal, IDW Games gets to enjoy to be the company that's going to release this particular game. It's a hit game out of Japan. We have worldwide English rights, and so we'll be sending this game pretty much everywhere you can imagine. Response has been overwhelming. Again, it is a dice rolling card game, fast pace. I think in the office we like to say it's sort of Settlers of Catan meets Dominion Light. I'm going to let Nate talk a little bit about the gameplay, but if you have never heard of this game, check it out. If you've never played it, please stop by the booth. We have a demo copy out, and we can play a few rounds. You can pick this game up extremely fast. It's possible that an 6, 7, 8-year-old can actually play this game, but the strategy takes it all the way up into adults. It really doesn't matter. Everybody who played this game finds it highly addicting, and they absolutely love it. So.
Yeah, I think John, you've played this. Why don't you cover gameplay on this one?
I'm not a game person, and you laid it out and started showing it to me. I got it just like that, and I wanted to play the whole game.
Yeah.
And I brought it home to my wife, made her play it, and she got it just like that, and we had a great time. It's a fantastic game.
Yeah, it's one of those games when you set it in front of new people, they start playing, and you can teach them in 10 minutes, and 15 minutes in, they're like, oh, let's start again because I'm going to beat you next time. Because they know, and that's what we look for in a game, that immediate, just, it clicks into place. So not only are we coming out with the game within a month, but we already have the expansion announced. That'll be out later in the fall, and to really bring a lot of hype, we're going to go ahead and do a pre-release kit that'll go out to retail. Jerry, do you want to cover the contents of that?
Yeah, the pre-release kit is going to be released in late September. It'll be out a good 4 months before the expansion, so everyone's going to be able to play a 5-player game through the expansion kit. It's a construction kit to take the same theme from Machikoro. You'll have not just the expansion, full expansion inside the kit, but there will also be exclusive foil landmark prize cards that will be given out to participants and event winners. And to just make it that much more special, it's also going to have an advanced demo copy of a full game by the design team of Machikoro that's coming out later this year called Dia Monsters.
So for Dia Monsters, has anyone played Love Letter? Okay, so if you like that, this is that, but better. I mean, that would be the description for Dia Monsters. It's a simple game. You can get anyone to play it in your game group. You get a 5-card hand. You're bidding on a monster. There's a lot of bluffing. There's a lot of meta. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's the same team from Machikoro. So if you like that, you'll love this. I think we'll move on from that one. Okay, so let's get to some interesting people on the dais here. So, for those of you not familiar with Chew, John, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about the world?
Sure. It's a comedy, a dark comedy about a detective who gets psychic impressions from what he eats. So he's got to go to crime scenes and eat dead bodies and gross things to solve crime. So. Yeah, we're gonna do a game of it.
It's awesome. I gotta tell you, this comic is just like the best.
So, yeah, I think this relationship started because Jerry and I wanted to do we do IDW Limited as well, the high-end limited edition comics, and we wanted to do Chew.
And I wanted them to as well because I've worked a lot with IDW and I know their stuff is spectacular, but that's the kind of stuff that could kind of piss off Eric Stevenson or Robert Kirkman.
That's okay.
And I don't want to make my bosses mad, so I had to say no. But then there came the announcement about the games, and I don't know if you guys know this, I was like emailing Doonbeer and Ryle about this, and they wanted to do a game, we wanted to do a game, and now it's going to happen.
And I think I saw that you tweeted you invented a game over one weekend and you sent that to us.
Well, yeah, Rob designed his own game too, and one weekend I attempted to design a card game, and I thought it was really great, and then I finally forced my family to sit down and play, and there was a lot of like germs of good ideas, but I don't know math or balance or anything like that, so they're playing, it's like, the fundamentals are good, but in practice it's kind of idiotic, so I need someone who can do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so the Chew game's still very early on in development. It's going to be designed by Kevin Wilson. We're still pulling together details at this point, so we're going to get on the phone together, and that's the fun thing about IDW games, and the plan is we really want these games to be thematic. You might have seen some other IDW games, Properties Lock and Key, that's been out before. We want the games we do in-house to be more dripping with theme, to really tell a story, and so we get the creators together with the designers and get them playing back and forth so that the end game really feels like it's part of that world and not just a fun game that happens to involve Chew. Rob, you sent me an email and you had some very cool concepts about a game. Some of them so good we might use them and might not want to say, but if you're comfortable sharing any of your thoughts on what you want to see in a board game, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, like John said, we've been playing with an idea of doing a game for a really long time. I mean, we kind of have a bucket list of cool things we've wanted to do since the very beginning. We've wanted toys. We've wanted we wanted a board game. I came up with some concepts back, I guess, 2 years ago, just screwing around and kind of looking at some of the themes of the book and just kind of.
Didn't you play like the Cryptozoic, like Walking Dead, and it kind of inspired you to try to do your own take?
No.
Oh, okay.
It was a little. Well, the Walking Dead game was a little complex. Like it took. I mean, I'm not an idiot, but it took me a good hour to figure it out. And my wife was still kind of decoding the details, and she beat me, but I'm pretty sure it's just because I didn't understand the game. But to build on the concept of what of Chew that John was saying, it's not just the cannibal psychic. It's also it exists in a world where there's a bird flu has killed several million people. So chicken is prohibited. All poultry is prohibited. There's a black market that pops up. So people are getting locked up by the FDA, who's now Homeland Security. They're locking up people for eating chicken at chicken speakeasies. It's ridiculous. And all these other government agencies kind of get like empowered. Like the USDA is, super busty Amazon women with cybernetic animals, and NASA's going after aliens, and it's all these other crazy jurisdictional pissing matches and whatnot. And kind of my idea was that Chew would kind of build on the idea of the theme of just crappy jobs, because the entire series is the main character, Tony Chew, getting put in really crappy jobs over and over again. He always has bosses who hate him. So my idea was basically that you'd have these different agencies, USDA, FDA, NASA. You could kind of juggle between them and get bad missions if your boss hates you, or you could sleep with your boss and get good missions. Or you can use your special powers, the food psychic thing, to solve crimes, but you would take hit points. You would lose hit points. Things kind of like that. It's a lot of moving parts, but that's kind of the gist of it, I guess.
See, mine was a card game where you needed a certain types of body parts or like brains or internal organs, and you had to collect them while giving like pickled liver or your spleen. You'd have bad cards that were funny that you'd try to screw your opponent with. So we have a lot of directions we could go with this, and we kind of are waiting to see what the designer who knows about these things have to say. But we're also curious about if you guys have any ideas you think would make a good Chew game.
And so when we came up with the idea to work with John and Rob on doing a game, so many ideas were coming out, as you've seen right here. So we didn't want to just create a card game with expansion after expansion after expansion. So what we plan to do is a whole portfolio of Chew games. So this one's a card game, and then we want to follow it up with a board game, and then maybe come back with a dice game or a role-playing game. We want to really explore a variety of different places and not feel like you have to linear follow them all the way through. You can join in wherever you want. It's lighthearted, it's fun, and we're going to be able to create some mechanics around it that just really resonate with the brand that they've created.
And we've also said that we really want to participate. Rob's going to do art wherever he can, cards and box and whatever, and anywhere I can actually supply writing. If I can make funny card text or whatever. I plan to be involved in that.
And we're going to take you up on that. One thing I know the game designer on this before we move on, I know he'll be excited in the various powers in the world. We talked about Tony, who's a Cibopath, but how many powers are you up to at this point? Could you rattle?
Some fan compiled just the food powers, and it was more than 2 pages.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you have a couple favorites real quick just to drive home how great this series is?
Well, I like the super fat guy who gets smarter the more he eats. So he's like this big, and then he's like spouting off mathematical equations. No one can understand him.
Yeah. My favorite is the Cibo-locution, I think.
Oh.
John makes up the names. He takes roots from different places and makes up fake names that people think are actual things but aren't. It's a guy who's a mute who only communicates through food. So if he can bake into a pie an entire symphony. So when you eat it, you hear the symphony, or you see the play or whatever. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Very cool.
Then on the far side of it, there's a guy in prison for domestic terrorism who has explosive flatulence.
So the games will be great. Look forward to that.
It does bring up a thought of what role-playing would be. With some of these.
Oh, I can't wait to do a role-playing game. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. Okay, so talking a lot more about theme and working with creators. A little further along in the process is the newly announced at this moment V-Wars. So, Jonathan, do you want to tell the people about the world of V-Wars?
Yeah, V-Wars is, for those people who like their vampires scary, V-Wars is a scary vampire story. But it's not a supernatural story. The premise is that melting polar ice released a virus. The virus triggered a gene that we all carry that can code for vampirism. And people start becoming whatever vampires tied to their ethnic background. So a Chinese vampire is different from a Polish vampire, different from a Croatian vampire, and so on. And I've written lots of books on the nonfiction books on the folklore of vampires, beliefs around the world throughout history. So we tap into actual belief systems about vampires. And the world, as people start emerging, a percentage of the population start manifesting as vampires, we have humans and vampires in conflict. Political conflict, armed conflict, even domestic violence. There's all different ways in which they can collide with one another to try to decide, what makes us human, and who has the right to be the dominant species. And there's good guys and bad guys on both sides. It started off as an anthology, which has been out for a little while now. We have a second one coming out, and a comic book, which has been selling out the issues, and a TV series in development now with Tim Schlottman, the head writer of Dexter, writing the show. And now, a game. I am so excited.
So the designer on this game is Rob Davao, and you should know him from Risk Legacy and Betrayal in the House at Haunted Hill. Hope I got that right. So there you go. So yeah, he carries big weight behind him, and I think what was great about bringing on Rob is we had an excellent conference call with pretty much everyone on the stage here, from David down to me, where Rob and Jonathan were able to talk about the world and what he saw in the narrative structure and what was going to be interesting to Rob games mechanic wise. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about what you got out of that call? Maybe starting with Jonathan.
Well, I haven't been a gamer up until pretty much recently. So, game theory is something that is new to me, and it's exciting because it takes ideas that I've already been playing with and just spins them around from a different point of view. In this story, one of the elements of the story is anyone can manifest as a vampire at any time. So paranoia is a big element, and even during gameplay, you could pull a card and suddenly you're a vampire. And that's going to change the whole dynamic of how you're playing the game. So the game can continue to change all the way through it. Nobody quite gets their feet solidly on the ground. You don't know who to trust, even yourself, all the way through the game. I think that is one of the most brilliant ideas, and that's something that Rob is really running with, and he's been coming up with some brilliant ideas that are going to make it fresh for me, and I know this world, and that's just jazzy.
That's great, yeah. And David, you're the editor of V-Wars, and a great thing you do is jam that book with content. The back of the book consistently has short stories, a letters page, classifieds. After that call and talking about the game, that's an advantage we have of having this monthly comic under us and the game. Did any inspiration come to you about ways to weave the two together to use that extra content space?
Jonathan writes really fast, so it's all I can do to get that stuff out as fast as I possibly can, because if I don't, I'm going to have a stack this high. So the inspiration comes from just actually how incredibly creative the people are that we work with at IDW, specifically on V-Wars. There's just so many ideas that are so good. We have to try to get them all out as quick as we can so people can enjoy them as much as I get to enjoy them, every day in the office. I don't know if I answered your question, but
Jonathan, you do write an incredible amount of content. Could I ask, what word count are you putting out a day?
About 4,000 words a day. Wow. This year I'm writing 5 novels.
I don't speak that much in a week.
This year I'm writing 5 novels, 2 monthly comics, and about 25 to 30 short stories. and touring, and I still take nights and weekends off to be with my wife. So I
Congratulations,
type fast.
man.
There's got to be some magic food power that ties into all this. Is there?
Coffee, baby.
Yeah, there we go.
I don't even want to hear the word decaf. I will hit you.
Maybe by the time the panel's over, John will have another book written right here.
And Jerry will have invented 2 product lines if you know him.
One thing, we talk about the panel being how comics can make great board games, and also comics is a great platform for promoting board games that really has never been done before. We are in a great position to be one of the first companies to do that because we are a comic publishing company and we're making board games. Our plan is to utilize our comics as a way to communicate on a regular monthly basis with our fans the content that we'll be creating for our board games, and then even after the board game's out, all of the iterative content that's used for future games. So that's a great place for us to explore that I think a lot of our other competitors don't have.
Well, I think the other thing that is great about IDW going into the game space is that, as probably everybody in here knows, comic books have the best creators, have the most interesting voices. Hollywood proves it time and time again. They don't have anything new to say, so they have to keep coming in and asking for our permission to use our stuff. And so IDW as a comic book company doing games, it's another instance where comic books gets to show everybody how to do it right. Fantastic art, interesting storylines, amazing gameplay. And so IDW Games is going to really, I think, quickly be a very interesting player in this space because of the immense amount of talent that is just inherent in comic books.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, speaking to the advantage of having that comic and game going together, we want to use those back pages to have Rob put another mission in the back for V-Wars, a scenario you can use. One thing we talked about was, if any of you use Board Game Geek, there's so many great session reports on there. And, I know David loves to publish letters from you. So if your gaming session, it should feel cinematic. It should feel like a V-Wars story, which is really a series of short stories going on all over the world. And so your gaming sessions could end up being in that monthly comic. And that's something where, again, we just feel like we have an advantage over everyone. So we are a new company. I know we haven't seen a lot from us, and the hopes was to kind of fly through this pretty quick and open up a dialogue and let you guys ask some questions. We've got some books to give away up here, so if you ask a question we like, you'll probably get a comic. So let's open it up to you guys. Go for it. In the front row, X-Files News. You can. Oh, this is official when you use the mic. This is good.
In terms of the X-Files, I was just wondering what you guys had planned that you could share for the expansion once we go past seasons 1 through 3.
Well, like you said, it covers the core board game covers the first 3 seasons. So if those of you who are X-Files fans, there's certain really great characters that show up after the 3rd season. So I would say Fluke Man.
Yeah.
It'll be the Fluke Man. All about him. So it's the one guy that I think is probably the most iconic, favorite sort of, I guess you would call it monster of the week for X-Files. So Kevin's working on the expansion now, and we expect to have an expansion out for that probably about maybe 5 months after the core board game.
Yeah, we had a great piece of artwork we wanted to use for the game. It's an amazing cover by Menton, and it's Flukeman. And so we sent that over to the designer for final approval, and he said, that's my whole expansion, to keep it out. So now you'll see a great teaser in the back of the manual. It'll look like a case file that's just been opened with a lot of questions, and Kevin will answer those 5 months after the game comes out. So really exciting.
So one of you guys mentioned, I think, that like with the Chew board game, that you are planning to follow that up with perhaps a dice game, and then
We're going to start with a card game.
Right. And so is that kind of your overall plan for what you're doing with all of your other properties too? Like, should we expect to see maybe like a V-Wars dice game?
I think, again, it's on a project-by-project basis. It depends on what really is a good fit for the property. Chew feels like it has that expansive world where a variety of gameplay works well within that IP. I wouldn't say V-Wars would serve well with a lot of different types of games. I think that this one is a heavy game. And what I mean by heavy, it's a big box large investment of time and energy to play these games, and we feel that that's going to be the core of our gaming strategy for V-Wars. So you're going to have figural markers, you're going to be spending hours playing the world that Rob's going to be creating for the board game side of that.
And we want to put Tony Chu in as many weird places as possible.
Yes.
So we're just gonna get a lot of good episodic content to keep it closer to how that series feels. V-Wars is global conflict, and expanding upon that as politics shift and as alliances shift, it feels more important to expand that where we could do new and innovative things with Chu. So it's just two completely different attacks.
You kind of talked about this briefly, but I was just curious what the inspiration for the first wave of like games that you guys wanted to go for. What kind of drove these, based off of these two properties, specifically for the first wave? And are there any ones that you would be excited about making into games going forward?
So
Yeah,
so I'm not 100% clear what the question is.
Just it's okay. The first one, why these ones?
Okay.
Out of IDW.
Okay, so the strategy for IDW games is very it's a very specific one. It is pairing incredible creators with incredible gameplay, and in that, Jonathan, John, and Rob are incredible creators, and is a natural fit for us to use those for gameplay, and that's kind of the bar that we set. How we execute our games, we don't want to be known by just a big box or just a small box game or just a dice game. We are open, and so by keeping ourselves open, we want to have that creativity to build games that fit around the properties well.
Are we excited about it? I think that's the main thing, is when Jerry bursts down my door and he goes, I want to do this. If I'm like, yeah, then it's, let's call everyone. And it's just, we want to be excited to deliver these games, and we want to put our whole heart and soul into them.
Hey,
I think
we're IDW Games, and we're publishing, and we're going to publish a game that's on an Image Comics property. That's being published from the comic side. We're fans of the property, and so that's kind of. So how do we decide? What do we like?
Cool. Thanks.
I think
I guess I'm,
Sir, to you, the backer.
yeah, I'm asking about the Kill Shakespeare game since I did back it. Do you have a copy here to look at or anything, or are you guys going to be at Gen Con doing demos? of any of
We
your
will
other
have
games?
copies at Gen Con for you to look at.
Okay.
We're not selling any games at Gen Con,
But
because
to
the retail
play demos?
absolutely finished copies will be at Gen Con, as well as Tammany Hall and Machikoro. All three of them are finishing up in production this week, and we are air freighting over those copies for Gen Con. The rest will be arriving on the water toward the latter half of August.
Perfect, thanks.
Yep.
Thank you again. Anybody who wants a comic after asking a question can come on up.
Oh yeah.
Okay, awesome. I brought a stack, as supplies last.
Yeah, you'll like that.
I'll sign
Awesome.
after.
So, sir?
First of all, I'm trying to recall if I actually had a good question, if I just wanted a comic. I don't know. I'm curious. Are you looking at your other than the X-Files? Are you looking at your other licensed comics to try and find games based off of some of the more mass market properties, as opposed to more of the comic exclusive ones like Kill Shakespeare and V-Wars?
Yeah, we look at everything. In some cases, game rights are not available because they're either being used by other manufacturers, or we don't feel it's the right fit for us at this time. But yes, we are looking through our own portfolio, and we are looking for the best opportunities. So yeah.
Okay.
And again, it boils down to stuff we really like, because when we really like it and they say no, we keep asking.
Yeah.
I have a quick question about the X-Files game. Early season X-Files, Assistant Director Skinner had a very kind of ambiguous relationship to Scully and Molly. Scully and Molly, wow.
I say that all the time.
I should know that because I'm a Dodgers fan. Come on, Scully. I was wondering, in the game, what type of role does Skinner take on, if he's involved in the game at all?
Okay, so in the game, each player has a variable player power. and Scully and Mulder. Say it slow so I get it right. Their powers complement each other, and Skinner has a power that leans toward being an influencer and being someone of that rank. And then the last playable character is Krychek, and he's kind of a jerk. So he's helpful, but his power will wound someone else in the game. So I think it's pretty spot on the way Kevin built it out.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question about a sample game development cycle. Like maybe if you can think of one of your games and talk a little bit about how much time is spent on conceptualizing the idea, how much on prototyping, how much on development, play testing, things like that.
Okay, we're going to talk about Kill Shakespeare. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
We'll be here forever.
We definitely going to talk about this. So when IDW Games started, we were bold enough to say, let's do Kill Shakespeare. It's a great concept, and and really the game designers are fantastic. Yedo is an incredibly great game to play. I don't think we could have picked a harder game for our first game. It is.
There's no way.
The two designers are Dutch. They speak broken English. So we had to go through lots of rounds of this isn't worded correctly, but should it be this way? No, that if you can't do it that way because the game won't work, it has to be this way. So we went back and forth for quite some time just trying to understand each other. Same thing in how it's translated to the board and adding this and changing this. It is an iterative process from even down to when you thought you were done, you're not done. You actually have more that has to be done and changed because games are evolving. And at some point, with some game designers, you have to actually cut them off because game designers are so passionate about the games they design, they are constantly coming up with new ideas. And so, well, when you have the rule book and they turn it over and they believe that it is finished and it's like, okay, we've got a game, we can now be done, over comes all the revisions again. And it's like, no, you can't do that. We're actually getting ready to produce. So it is chaotic at best, as I can describe it. But there is some organization in the chaos. We do run schedules. We do try to get to a place where the rules are at 80% before we start applying artwork and doing a lot of graphic design work. Because that's the part that really takes a lot of time is the opening of files, the correction of files, the changing of files. So we try to bring as many things into that rule book that you see as possible and have it done before we start contracting all the rest of the pieces to put it together. So it is an iterative process, I can say at best. And sometimes when you get to the end where you thought you were going to be, you finished up, was absolutely not the same place. But at the very end, we stand behind that every game is going to be great. So if we get to the end and we feel it's not great, then we will kick it all the way back to the very beginning and we will start over.
Yeah, and I'd say that's a great point to talk about the creators' involvement because Anthony and Connor, who manage that brand amazingly, I mean, they've brought their comic to classrooms, to stage plays, they're working on TV. They cared a lot about how we handled that game, and they cared so much that they wrote flavor text for every single card. And the cards, the quests you go on are thematic 3-act quests. So yeah, adding one more level of editing and one more level of intricacy. I know David probably still has nightmares about that rule book, but what's nice is he came on to edit that rule book, and everyone I've sent him since, he said, oh, this is easy.
Yeah.
So it almost broke all of us, but in the end we went with the Jonathan Mayberry plan of brewing as much coffee as possible, and it's going to be a beautiful and great game.
I mean, I joked that it really was a difficult process the first time out because we really did pick the hardest possible game to do first. It was I'm still mad at Jerry, but at the end of the day, absolutely, it is an incredibly interesting game with hours of gameplay, and I think that even if you're not a fan of Shakespeare in any way, this is a game that you could play, and if you have any knowledge of Shakespeare or even more specifically the Kill Shakespeare, mythology in that comic book, it's just layer upon layer of really interesting and exciting, fun that you're going to have with this particular project. And the thing that I would say about the games, just speaking to your point directly, is that not having done any games myself, I was really interested in exactly what Jerry said, in that it is an incredibly creative process. And the game designers are much like, the writers that we have in comic books, to use as an analogy. And these guys are really, refining and tweaking and thinking about story elements and making something interesting for the reader, or in this case, the game player. And in that, I think, even though it was a difficult process, it was incredibly enjoyable. And as I say, I think everyone will see that in the end result. Just a really enjoyable piece.
Thank you.
Thank you. We got about 5 more minutes and about 6 more comics, so.
Regarding the X-Files game, you mentioned that the playable characters have core powers. What are Mulder and Scully's powers?
So I have to make sure I remember what's going on here. The Smoking Man, he plays cards around the board that are essentially traps, and some of them are bluffs, and Mulder is able to kind of see through his bluffs as he would, and so he'll take a peek at one of the cards and be able to discuss with everyone at the table exactly what that card is, which is really helpful. And when you go around and investigate, not to get too bogged down on it, but everyone needs to work on these investigations, or the Smoking Man will essentially close those investigations and get the X-Files canceled forever. So they need to be working together, and they really need open communication, and Mulder works well with that. Scully's power is called Skeptic, and unfortunately I'm drawing a blank on exactly what it is because it's day 5 of Comic-Con, but it's great.
Do you guys need external board game testers?
Yeah, absolutely. Come get my card.
Absolutely.
And if you're making games, get my card. We'll listen to your pitch.
How does something that's not an IDW property like Machikoro, how does that get selected? You had mentioned like a partnership with that other game company?
Yeah, it comes down to quality. We have lots of people who have pitched both ideas for board games, completed board games. We've seen board games on napkins and whatnot. It comes down to quality. If it's a finished game and we have an opportunity to publish it, it basically, it's got to be a great game. We feel it needs to be that level of quality for us to want to bring it out there. We saw it immediately in Machikoro, and we've got a few other games in 2015 that we think really have that level that people will enjoy and want to repeat play. It just really comes down to the quality level of the games.
Yeah, Nathan McNair's pretty tapped into what's good out there. He's not here, and I'm not going to reveal his secrets, but he loses sleep a lot to make sure he's on a Japanese time zone sometimes. And then we come in the next day, and he's like, get this, get that. And 2 games we've got coming out, you don't even need to know what they're about, but if you see the box, you're going to buy it. Yeah. And that's not an exaggeration. His daughters screamed when they saw it. Our CEO, who has yet to take home one of the mock samples, he's normally making us test it first. They hit the table. He said, "We have this deal," and then he took them, and we haven't seen them since. So we've got a very strong import lineup coming out that's gonna be major.
Yeah, we're gonna have a whole portfolio of games that will be as inexpensive as $10 to $15, and then we're gonna have some that's gonna really be absolutely loaded with just about everything, and those will be somewhere in the $60, $70, $80 range.
Do we know what the Chew game?
I think the Chew's probably going to be around between 30. I don't think it's going to be anything more than 40. I think that we feel it's going to be driven by the card games, going to be driven by cards at the table, and probably some really fun pieces.
I want to make sure we keep enough in your comic budget to get the next Omnivore edition.
Is the Chew game going to be based more like Munchkin style, or do you guys have a concept for how it's going to play yet?
No, it'll be a playable, fun game.
Okay. I mean, it's not. Is it going to be co-op or like, Have you conceptualized
Munchkin
like,
jokes. No, Munchkin's a very good game. No, we're still very light on details. I think we're bouncing them around. We want it to be a really light, fun game
Maybe
with
some
with
deduction
jokes.
going on and-
Definitely, I think there's a lot of investigation in the game, so it has to be deductive. John, Rob, what do you want to see? What should it be?
I want it to be funny.
There it is, funny. I think Jonathan had a great idea here. They'll have edible game pieces, right? The whole game will be edible, so when you're done, you just eat it up.
It will obviously be easily adapted into a drinking game. Let's be honest. That's going to be the easiest adaptation ever.
Yeah.
I have a question from Twitter. Any word on minimum and maximum number of players for the X-Files game?
2 to 5.
2 to 5, yep. It's 2 to 5, right?
That was fun.
Yeah.
I'll send them a Comixology code for a comic. You can
All right. I think we have just a few minutes. Any last-minute questions?
get to it. I got 3 books. Come on back up.
All right, this is a continuation of one of the previous questions. Do you need any more external game testers?
Come get my card.
Yeah. There we go. Excellent.
Yeah, playtesters are a real important part of the process, and I'll tell you, my own personal pet peeve is a lot of people ask me this, and then they don't email me.
Yeah.
I honestly, you'll send me an email, I'll email you back, because sometimes I desperately need a game played. So when you get an opportunity, take it.
And I got to tell you the other thing too. One just as important as a person who's a fan of games is a person who has never played games testing a game. So a lot of game companies forget that, and so that you end up creating these games. And you forget that there are people that have never played these games, and they open up the rule book and they go, what have I bought? So absolutely. So if you've never played games, let us know too. We'll love to get you on the list.
Since I backed the first Kickstarter, are you planning on using Kickstarter as a vehicle for any more games?
Yes. Not grossly abundantly, though. It'll just be very strategically a few times throughout the year where it absolutely makes sense.
I want to see some CHOG pledge goals and add-ons, so maybe.
Is Secret Agent Poyo making an appearance in the Chew game?
We hope so. Like when I designed my game, there was one, there were these point cards that were all screwed up because I didn't know the math. Then there was like one super card, and it was Poyo. That's like the 100-point card. But we haven't figured out the specifics. But yeah, he will be in there, and people will either want the card or not want the card.
Nice, thank you.
I got one comment, Nate, before we wrap up. So at the beginning of this, Nate was saying that I was the first guy to hire Rob Guillory to do work in comics, and I take a lot of pride in that, actually. But I actually have a public apology for John Lehman, because so Rob and I were, in contact, and Rob said, "Hey, I'm starting to work on this new project, and I think it's gonna get set up at Image Comics." And I said, "Oh, well, that's great. How long? I think it's gonna be like 4 issues, but we're gonna try to do more." And I said, "Oh, who's the writer?" "Oh, it's John Lehman. He's, I think he's gonna be a name, and he's done this other thing." And I'm like, "Oh, good." I said, "How much are you getting paid?" And he said, "No, I'm not gonna do it for a page rate. I'm gonna own part of the property." And I said, "That's the stupidest thing you've ever." Get a page rate. Don't get any ownership. That's dumb. Just get a page rate. Get paid. And so, sorry, John, I was way wrong on that one, and thank God that Rob did not listen to me on that.
But no, you're wrong. Like, he gets a page rate.
Yeah, I get a page rate.
I own it.
Oh.
Ah! Completely wrong.
Oh, that was a
Rob.
Completely lame story. I blew that in every possible way.
I probably should have just got along with it. Yeah, you probably should.
Okay.
Horrible.
All right, if that's it, like us on Twitter, like them on Twitter, like us on Facebook. We give stuff away. We're giving away, starting a newsletter. Come down to the booth, sign up, or scan one of our boxes for the QR code. We'll give away a copy of Machikoro next week.
Booth 1622, if you guys want to stop by, we have a demo copy of Machikoro sitting out, and you guys can play a few rounds.